excited to be presenting my research to you today. I do qualitative research on cultural competency and humility, and I want to take this time to thank my mentor, if she's watching, and she is Dr. Randa Reamer Eskridge. So, yeah, okay. It was eye-opening and helped me see that there were so many distinctive and unique people in the world. Hello, everyone, and I am super excited to present my research to you today, my qualitative research on distinctive and unique people, healthcare students' discomfort in defining diversity. So there are many gaps in research on diversity-related topics. Many of these only have one time point worth of data, and there's a lot of research lacking in the field of healthcare. So our research sought to fill these gaps. We have 3 different time points of data, and we also studied, we did research on diversity-related course on pre-healthcare students. So this course, this diversity-related course, consisted of 30 undergraduate white and primarily female students who were all pre-healthcare. So this course also consisted of the lecture, the lab, and a service learning component as well. So this lab is primarily what we're going to be focusing on, as well as some different assignments that we analyzed to get our data here today. The lab was a safe space for students to talk about diversity-related topics, which is consistent with transformative learning principles. So in this course, our research consisted of 3 time points worth of data, as you can see here. Time 1 was before the class meeting, time 2 was at the midterm of the course, and time 3 was at the final assignment of the course. And so by looking over these responses, we were able to look for similar ways that these diversity-related topics were discussed. Then we sorted these quotes from the assignments into similar groups, and then we refined those and named them according to what we saw in the data. So these are what are called our themes. So as you can see, underneath each time point, we have our themes. So throughout this whole sorting process, we also thought about our different backgrounds and how our backgrounds might affect the way that we sort our data. And some of these backgrounds include 3 of 4 of the team members identified as being white, and we all value diversity. So we made sure to memo this, write it down, and talk to our different team members to make sure that this didn't affect our research. So our research consisted of 3 sets of data, and we named each of these based on how the students were processing their discomfort. Time 1, students were experiencing discomfort. Time 2, students were reacting to discomfort. And time 3, students reflected on their discomfort. Then we broke these down even further into 3 subcomponents, which we call subthemes in qualitative research. So in time 1, students were experiencing discomfort, and this was seen through using language that was not their own. So for example, students relied on socialized language or using phrases such as distinctive and unique people instead of using privilege and race. They avoided using those 2 terms, and it's possible that these might be because they were unfamiliar discussing diversity or were afraid of failing to define diversity themselves. And then they also excluded whiteness from diversity. So this primarily white class might have seen themselves as the norm. Next, they reacted to their discomfort. So they acknowledged that they were uncomfortable speaking about diversity to their peers for fear of being seen as unpopular or uneducated. Then they were also naming their discomfort and said, I am uncomfortable with talking about diversity because maybe I haven't done this before, but also because I'm uncomfortable with my participation in systems of oppression. And then lastly, students excused themselves from continued discomfort because they were uncomfortable with their participation in systems of oppression, but also because they wanted to discontinue that. So last time, they reflected their discomfort. Some students called the course a hoax, which means rejecting discomfort. Some students allowed it, saying that they were experts on the matter, and then some embraced it, seeing social justice as a lifelong process. So this is consistent with transformational learning, and I want to thank you so much for your time today. I'll take any questions. You get it first.
Start today. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. What an interesting talk, and I'm really interested in everything else that went on in that class.
Yes.
Really, during the whole semester.
Yes.
Tell me what was kind of the final assignment of the course,
Sure.
and what were I understand that you're evaluating and you're categorizing the language that the students in the class used
Correct.
to talk about these issues. Tell me a little bit more about that final assignment and
Yeah,
how
sure.
that prompted some of these responses.
Sure. So the final assignment was more of asking the students to reflect on the course as a whole. And also, there was a particular question that we found of interest that we used most of the data for time 3 for. And it was asking students to reflect on that initial assignment. So the one that they had before the course. And asking the students, would you say anything differently? How has this course shaped how you view diversity? And some students said that they thought that the first part was a hoax. They thought that this entire class was not purposeful at all, and that they didn't learn anything from it. And then some students felt as if they had grown so much, and now they're an expert on this. And now they can teach other people to be culturally competent, and that was it. So that's like the allowing discomfort piece here. And then also some students were like, I've learned so much, I cannot believe that's where I started and that's where I am, and I can't wait to see where I go from here. And that's the embracing discomfort. So that question, the reflection at the final piece, really asked them to think, let's look at this journey. Where have you come? And how do you feel about it now that you're here? And where do we go from here?
If I could just follow up very
Yeah,
briefly.
go for it.
So for these 3 particular data gathering points, were these written assignments?
Yes,
Okay.
these are all written. So that's actually one of the limitations of our data. So qualitative research is done either through written or through a verbal component, which is then transcribed, that sort of thing. So that's one of our limitations, is that this is written data, and we couldn't follow up questions to that, get down to what the students might have really meant, get down to that nitty and gritty, basically. And so what we're actually working on now is that we're going to follow up with those students, and we're going to ask them how they view diversity now, how they view cultural competency, and if they attribute what they believe to the class, or what they attribute their views on now to. So to see where we've come from, essentially, since the last timepiece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. The first is, if I heard you correctly, you talked about acknowledging or recognizing the whiteness or the ratio of white students within the class, and you
Yes.
said something like, we took a memo of it so it didn't affect our research.
Yes. So one of the criticisms of qualitative research is that it is biased. And so what we did to make sure that we attributed and recognized our own bias in the project was that we wrote down our reactions, our initial reactions, took a break from the data, didn't necessarily like write down like, hey, like we didn't do the themes essentially right then, right there. We actually took a break from it, and we came back to it, you know, kind of with a much more open mind, and we talked about how our biases, where our biases came from, how they might impact the data, and to try and be as unbiased as possible. Of course, that in any type of research is impossible. But we did want to recognize that that might have had an effect on our data.
So, okay, so it's not that you're making a memo so it won't impact your data, but rather you're looking to take it into account.
Yes. Yes.
And then my other question is, so what is the potential impact of this research?
Yes, so with qualitative data, we like to see essentially what are students thinking, and we wanted to see also if these if the different aspects of the course had an impact on their diversity, their views of diversity. And so what we know from the literature is that transformational learning theory also encourages teachers to essentially have a component where they are allowed to talk through this discomfort. So instead of just dealing with it by themselves, we had a trained individual that was not even a part of the course. It was not graded. It was just facilitated in order to have a space where individuals were allowed to talk through it. So we wanted to see if this transformational learning theory could be applied to a diversity-related course in healthcare. And then we wanted to see how such a thing would have an impact on thoughts of diversity over the course.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. A few questions.
Okay.
So this is, at least appears to me, I'm not an expert on qualitative research by any means, but it is, it's kind of descriptive,
Yes.
Exploratory.
Yes.
And so what would be the ultimate purpose of the follow-up? I mean, in terms of, I'm thinking this is a first step to help you design a experiment or experimental setting.
Yes.
To achieve what end, and
Yes.
what are you trying to improve on with this line of study?
So qualitative research is more not about like achieving certain results, but to describe phenomenon that are occurring. So we want to follow up with students because and have interviews or focus groups to see if what we inferred by the written parts was actually occurring, if it is concurred by those students, and whether or not there is maybe like a time for now to continue that research beyond the confines of the classroom to see what other things are impacting how they view diversity and their cultural competence in the healthcare field. Did I answer your question?
I believe so.
Okay.
And then, you mentioned that the data were all in writing.
Yes.
And so
yes.
not without an opportunity to verbally engage or
Right.
follow up and so forth. Is there any thought that such an opportunity might change the attitudes that come out of the course that you're trying to capture? In other words, if the students were able to, to have those conversations rather than just writing things down,
Right.
would that affect the outcome?
I am not sure. I don't think so. Just because whenever we looked through this data, we did it time by time. So I did not see time 3 until after I had done time 1 and time 2. And that was so that we didn't extrapolate that into a different time. We were looking just at that data. But using what I know now from time 1, time 1 is these 3 sub-themes are definitely founded through what we're seeing through the reflection of time 1, especially even at time 2, because we see that they're acknowledging that they're uncomfortable. In time 1, they didn't say anything about being uncomfortable, but it's also like talking to a person if they're fidgety, that sort of thing. You can also kind of infer to a certain extent based upon the ways that they're phrasing things if they're uncomfortable with a certain topic. So I don't necessarily think that it would change the data, so to speak. I think it would actually just further prove what we saw in each timepiece. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.